Innovating Education Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.
Games are usually seen as recreation, but increasingly, educational games are being developed as an aid to learning. This week we look at projects in the UK and Japan, and an expert talks about the pros and cons of using games to engage children in the classroom. Computers and information technology are now part of daily life for many young people, and some teachers are looking at ways of incorporating these new tools into their teaching. One innovation is the use of 3D games in biology to motivate students and make the complexities of the human body easier to understand. Let's find out more.
Here in this school in the UK, 3D movies have been used as teaching aids by the biology department since 2010, with good results.
And we can see first the blood flow.
When I started teaching science, we just had a blackboard, really, and we'd have these models as well. So you could stand at the front of the class with a model, and you try to get everybody to see it, and perhaps you'd pass it round, and then people at the back were getting irritated because they didn't have it. And then we got the projectors onto a whiteboard, and we could use animations, and things moved, and that was better. And now we've got the 3D, and absolutely everybody in the class can see the 3D. It's hanging in the middle of the classroom, the image. You can rotate it so they can all look at it. We don't need to pass it around anymore, and it's fantastic.
The jury may still be out when it comes to 3D in cinemas, but in education, teachers are finding it invaluable. For now, images can be manipulated using a mouse, but in the future, students may be able to move the images with their hands.
I'd say it's quite like going to the cinema with the 3D effects, and like seeing a 3D film is much more interesting than a 2D film, so seeing 3D biology is more interesting than 2D biology.
It's a bit like playing PlayStation and games like that compared to normally learning from textbooks, which can be boring.
3D projectors are the same price as conventional ones, and equipping the students with 3D glasses is relatively affordable. Best of all, the technology is easy to use.
Many times I would put a technology into the classroom and we would need to include expensive training, or we would encounter difficulty that the teacher perhaps found it hard to use. This technology has been very easy to implement and a great success.
And obviously the glasses are really stylish.
To find out more on the pros and cons of game-based learning, we're joined by Professor Paul Pivec, an Austrian expert on the subject. He also explains how teachers and parents can help children get the best results from playing these games. Let's hear more from him now.
Professor Paul Pivec researches and teaches at the Johanneum University in Graz. He's an enthusiastic advocate of game-based learning.
Well, students today, they can learn in a virtual environment, and that helps them with what we call experiential learning. So they can practice things, they can do simulations, and they can actually have fun, especially if it's like a game-based learning. If they're playing a game that's designed specifically for learning, they can enjoy the learning. No matter what virtual world you go into.
This doesn't mean that teachers are out of a job, however. Quite the reverse, in fact.
The disadvantage is perhaps that a lot of the times as a teacher or a lecturer, or even a parent will give them the technology and say, here, go and learn. And that doesn't work. That's just like what we call a content dump. We're just saying it's the same as giving them a book, and they'll get sidetracked. They'll go onto Facebook and then they'll start socialising. So you've got to keep them focused. You still have to have the teacher or parent involvement to guide them and to talk about what they've learned afterwards. The debriefing, that's where a lot of the learning takes place. So the disadvantage often comes when we just leave them alone and say, here's the technology, go and do it. We need to get that balance. We need to guide them through the technology. We need to guide them with the content that they're learning.
Educational games are an addition to a teacher's repertoire, not a replacement for other methods.
The old ways are very much still valid. The teachers do need to embrace the new technology and need to know how to use it. We don't want the pupils knowing more about the technology than the teachers. Often they do, but that can still work. We can still discuss with the pupil what did they learn from that? How does that work? And we can get them thinking more about what they're learning. And the more you think about what you're learning, the more it accelerates the learning process.
The trick is to combine old and new teaching methods to engage young people and help them learn.
In Japan, teachers have developed a traditional card game called karuta into a tool to help teach literature and language. And we meet some young Japanese people following the footsteps of their ancestors in a contest to memorize very long poems. It's a way of stimulating their memory and fostering physical abilities. Let's have a look.
Karuta is a traditional Japanese memory game in which competitors learn poems off by heart. The idea is to listen to the beginning of a verse and grab the card with the right ending written on it before anyone else. As well as a good memory, you need quick reflexes to win. To enter a Karuta contest, you have to have memorized 100 poems. These members of the Karuta Association at the University of Tokyo study every syllable of all the 100 poems that are recited in the contest. These poems are known as the 100 poems from 100 poets. Karuta is also played in schools as part of the curriculum.
In Japan, karuta is used to teach secondary school students traditional literature and grammar. Also in foreign countries, karuta is used to teach children who are just starting to learn Japanese. Through karuta, they also learn about Japan's history and literature.
Karuta is often played at New Year, and many people can quote the poems they learned many years ago in school thanks to playing Karuta.
The meaning of karuta goes beyond the basic interpretation. These cards have many interpretations. It's really interesting that here in these words we can read other meanings. That's why karuta is such a good way to learn about Japanese culture.
The game originated about 800 years ago amongst aristocrats during the so-called Heian era. Today, it's widely practiced in schools and universities all over Japan.
So finally, do give us your feedback on game-based learning. I hope you've enjoyed this week's program. We will be back next week. Goodbye for now.
Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.